Yo, YouTube, what up? Wanna talk about something real quick. I know Blood just made a video, and I think I just watched Divine Sense. But I recently dwelled into a project which is taking me, deep into the history of boxing. Actually all the way to the bare knuckles, London prize rules of boxing. And when you go down in the history of boxing, the one thing that every single legendary fighter has is a legendary opponent. Now, throughout history, the history of boxing, there have been some unfortunate situations where certain legendary fighters were void of a legendary opponent. Recently, we had the case of Roy Jones Jr. For 10 years, he virtually dominated the sport and was void of that legendary opponent. Another good case we could say was Larry Holmes. He dominated the heavyweight division for a good amount of years, and he was void of that legendary opponent. That's just in my time that I can remember. But I'm sure there are other cases. When you go back into the day of, right before Joe Louis winning the heavyweight championship, there was a void of legendary fighters during that time between, let's say, Joe Louis and Jack Johnson. But the torch of the fighter that carries the sport has been passed on, from John L. Sullivan to Jim Jeffries to fucking Jack Johnson to Joe Louis to Sugar Ray Robinson to Muhammad Ali to Mike Tyson to Roy Jones Jr. to Oscar De La Hoya to, now you could probably say Floyd Mayweather Jr. But, certain fighters, let's say like Oscar De La Hoya, he had Felix Trinidad. At the peak of his career as that legendary opponent, Mike Tyson had Evander Holyfield. Ali had Joe Frazier and George Foreman. Lewis had Max Schmeling. Jersey Joe Wilcox. A couple other guys. Sugar Ray Robinson had a few guys. So it is very a unique situation for a legendary fighter to be a legend or have legendary status and also have a legendary opponent. Now, in the case of Floyd Mayweather, the fucked up thing about his situation is his legacy will probably end up being the motherfucker who found reasons not to fight. And the reason why I say that that'll probably ultimately end up being his legacy is because you can already see the trend of that shit happening. The Canelo Alvarez's, the Kell Brooks, all of these guys, they don't want to go up through the ranks. They just want to get that payday. And no doubt, as a boxer, the thing that you want to do is make the most money, taking the least amount of risk. But the fucked up thing is with Floyd Mayweather, finding different reasons not to fight Manny Pacquiao, I think will ultimately be his legacy. And the reason that I say that is because of this. Did anybody else's stomach turn when they heard Nonito Donaire making up excuses why he couldn't or shouldn't fight Rigondeaux? I mean, it was fucking ridiculous. I mean, if you get into a post-fight interview and for the last 3 fights, the motherfucker that they asking you about is the motherfucker that you making excuses why you shouldn't fight, sounds kind of ridiculous. And I think going into the future with certain guys like Canelo saying that he wanted to fight Cotto, whether Cotto loses or not, it's starting to be the trend. And I think that the thing is, in the future, in the next few years, and maybe even the next generation, the fucking saying will be, well, Floyd didn't fight Pacquiao. You know what I'm saying? Instead of the standard being set that, well, Leonard fought Hearns, Hearns fought Hagler, Duran fought Leonard, Frazier fought Ali, Ali fought Foreman. It'll be, well, fuck, Pacquiao, Mayweather didn't fight. We know every fucking fight that, some fans clamored to want to see didn't always happen. Not every single fight. But there's never been a fight of this magnitude in this position that didn't happen. You know what I mean? If Brandon Rios and Lucas Matisse never fight, then I don't think that'll go into the history of, or at least not right now. It wouldn't be the travesty of a fight not happening. You know what I mean? But at some point in time, I think that the momentum will build and people will want to see it more. But I don't ever think that it'll get to the point of Mayweather and Pacquiao. And the fucked up thing is, as great as a lot of people want to say Mayweather is, how skilled he is, or how much money he's made, he will, out of his own mouth, tell everybody. He'll get in front of cameras, on radio shows, and say he don't give a fuck about legacy. So, not only does a person blatantly tell you that they don't give a fuck about legacy, how do we even want to put him in the circle of legendary fighters where he continuously tells you he don't give a fuck about legacy? Legacy don't pay the bills, belts and all that shit. We all know that shit don't really mean nothing. But when it come down to it, Oscar De La Hoya, that motherfucker fought everybody. He lost a lot of fights, but it ain't nobody you can say that the dude didn't fight. You know what I'm saying? And when he had that opportunity to fight that legendary opponent, he took it without question. And I think what'll end up happening is, I don't know if anybody specifically remembers this. It was, I want to say, Bernard Hopkins' first fight after he beat Felix Trinidad. Somehow they did like a split broadcast with it was a fight in two different places, and you know what I'm saying, they had one crew one place, one crew in another place. So Roy Jones was doing some commentary or whatever, and so somehow they got Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins talking about fighting. So Roy kept saying, 60-40, 60-40. And Bernard kept saying 50-50. So, they went back and forth. And honestly, to me, I'm thinking, all right, fuck it. Eventually, they're going to end up fighting. I mean, you know what I'm saying? They're going to work this shit out and they're going to fucking fight. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wanted to see this fucking fight at the time. Well, they didn't end up fighting. Probably fucking almost 10 years later, these motherfuckers finally fought. And at that point, nobody gave a fuck. You know what I'm saying? I never even seen that second fight between them two. Nobody gave a fuck about that fight at that point. That shit had came and gone. Wasn't no need for the motherfuckers to fight then. And the same shit might end up happening with Mayweather and Pacquiao. At the point where finally motherfucker says, okay, let's make this fight, I think it's gonna be too late. Other fighters will have been and built their own legends, and that's when great fighters were great fighters. And we watch the current generation of good and great fighters, and they right on the fucking doorstep of being, has-beens, used to be's, and was, and I hate to fucking say it, but I think that's gonna end up being the main part of his legacy. You know what I'm saying? Because every generation, people gonna talk about the money and all that shit. Yeah, he made a lot of money, but Ali made a lot of money in his time. You know what I'm saying? So did fucking Joe Louis. He made a lot of money in his fucking time. I actually was just reading where when John L. Sullivan and Jim Jeffries fought, they said he got offered $106,000 or something like that, and that was astronomical. You know what I'm saying? They had the president talking about, this is fucking ridiculous for fucking human beings to get paid this kind of money to be fighting. And that was the president of the United States saying that shit. And at the time, it was only $100,000. $100,000. And now I know Floyd is making crazy buku money and shit. But, think about this. Niggas was leaving the South to go north to work at Ford for $5 a day. That was the fucking shit. $5 a day. You know what I'm saying? Can y'all imagine making $5 a day? Not an hour. Hell, $5 an hour right now is some bullshit. So $5 a day. Can y'all imagine motherfuckers leaving Georgia, Louisiana, Florida, Mississippi to come to Detroit for $5 a day? That was the fucking influx of the population of Detroit. $5 a day. So yeah, when you talk about Floyd Mayweather making millions of dollars, it seemed like a lot of money. But due to inflation, you know what I'm saying, he basically making what every other fucking fighter made. You know what I'm saying? Because, when fucking Henry Ford was wealthy, he may not even been a millionaire. But today the Fords, William Clay Ford, motherfucker has billions of dollars. You know what I'm saying? But back in the day when he was one of the wealthiest men in the world, he might only been 100,000 there. So yeah, he made good money, but it ain't so much more money than any other fighter. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that he's making the kind of money probably that Ali made. Ali was, a firestorm all over the world. You know what I'm saying? He had a certain charisma that there have been very few people ever to have. You know what I mean? So money probably will be part of his legacy, but I think what'll ultimately end up being his fucking legacy is, I don't have to fight because Floyd didn't fight Pacquiao. And I think that's a fucking shame. You know, regardless of whoever's fault it is. And, you know, I remember a couple of people making videos about the fact that whether it's Floyd's fault or not, most of the world is based on perception. You know, it ain't about if you killed somebody. It's if you can prove that I killed somebody. You know what I mean? Whether it's Floyd's fault or not, the perception is fucking awful. And it's not even no hard shit to discredit. You know what I'm saying? It's not even some shit that the evidence isn't there to be debunked. But he just ain't doing shit. And it's fucked up. You know? Because I think there was a point in time where a lot of us black folks in this country were getting to a lot of heated racial battles and debates and insults about fucking Floyd Mayweather and whether he could or couldn't beat Manny Pacquiao. That shit had grown to bigger than boxing. That most fighters very rarely have a opportunity to be a part of. I mean, it swelled up to enormous proportion that, you know, I honestly thought that if the fight would have happened, they, you know what I'm saying, like, there might have been like some fucking race riots and shit. It was that tough for a minute. And at the time, I wanted to see Floyd fight that motherfucker so bad, because it almost felt like I was back in the day, you know what I'm saying, reading some history books, when you know what I'm saying, Joe Louis had beat Max Schmeling and motherfuckers was celebrating all over the country because he had beat a German right in the time of World War II. That's how I felt, you know, like if he'd have beat that guy, I would have went and celebrated. You know what I'm saying? I'm not even a big Floyd man. I'm not even a fan really of Floyd Mayweather. You know, he just doesn't, you know, not my cup of tea. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't have no problem with what the fuck he does necessarily or who he is. Just not my cup of tea. You know. So I'm not really a fan of his, but I damn sure would have pulled like hell for his ass to beat the fucking snot out of him. And it's not really because I dislike Pacquiao, but what it represented, you know what I'm saying? That shit was a symbolic battle, you know what I'm saying? That shit was at one point much more than a motherfucking fistic display of pugilism. You know, that shit was something way beyond two motherfuckers in a square circle trying to display the sweet science. That shit grown way out of that shit. And there are decades and thousands of fighters who would have given their right arm to be in that situation and would have gladly stepped up and took it. But I think that that'll end up ultimately being his fucking legacy.